Let's see how we can start to use data types as parameters to our definitions. I'm going to start by looking here in params and primitive. In this tab area, we're going to have various different simple types of data. Booleans, which are just a variable to hold true or false. Integers, numbers, text. We also have things like color, complex numbers, culture information, globally unique identifiers, and we can even use time as a data type in Grasshopper. Let's start by looking at the Boolean. And notice that I have the icon view turned on. Previously, it would have looked like this. For this discussion on data types, I prefer to look at the icon. So I'm going to say display, draw icons. Now I see the icon that this references, which is the Boolean. This Boolean param is orange. We know already that that means that there's something not quite right about this component. It's not perfectly happy. Let's see what it's telling us here. It says floating parameter bool failed to collect data. Just means that we haven't given it any data, so it's just orange. Let's go ahead and give it some data then. So if we right click here, we can say set Boolean, and we can choose true or false. Let's set it to true. Now you see that the component goes from orange to gray, and everything's great. If we connect a panel by going to params, input, and panel, you see that it says true. Now I can right click on that and say set multiple Booleans. And this way I can add more. I can say false, false, true. Say commit changes. Now I have a small list of Boolean values, trues and falses. If I want a little bit more control over that, I can right click and I can say manage Boolean collection, and I can start to add or delete different values. They start by being false, but you can change them here. Say true. Notice that if I put 0 or if I put 1, it automatically converts them. Now every input to every component, for the most part, will always have the set multiple, and manage collection. That should become very familiar. Let's take a look at another primitive parameter. Here, we have this file path parameter. Sometimes we're going to be referencing data from external files. So this is a way to point Grasshopper in that direction. So I'm going to bring down a file path. I'm going to right click, set one file path, and I'll reference this little text file I have here. This isn't actually the data in the text file. If I look at a panel again here, this is just the path on my hard drive to that file. Finally, there's this generic data component, and that just holds anything, any data type that we might have, whether it's a primitive data type or a geometric data type. Over here in params geometry, we have all sorts of stuff that deals with, well, geometry, starting with point. So let's try here params geometry and point. Again, the component's orange. We know what it means. We see the typical point icon, which is this little X. Let's right click and set one point. Now in this case, because it's geometry, it's either going to ask us to type in some values or draw a point somewhere here in Rhino, which is what I'm going to do. And there's my point. We can also reference existing points. We'll talk about this a little bit later down the line. Let's take a look at, for example, circles. I'm going to right click, set one circle, and it allows me to draw a circle. Creating the geometry can be done in various ways. This is one of them. It's not the only way, because we could also go to curve, primitive, and create our circle from a point and a radius, and oftentimes is preferred. The circle, circular arc, line, all of these will ask us to create some geometry. But as I mentioned, there's other ways to create this through the curve primitive tools. The same could be said for a lot of the surface and mesh components. For example, box, place that here, we right click, set one box. It's going to ask us to draw a box. But of course, we can go to surface, primitive, and we have a couple of components here that allow us to draw a box with parameters as inputs. Finally, there's some more obscure components, but very useful sometimes, geometry cache and geometry pipeline, as well as a generic geometry component that accepts anything that is geometry. We'll get a little bit deeper into referencing objects from Rhino and some more complex operations in a later video.